Philanthropy over the years has been obviously focused on ensuring that the change that they want to bring in society is effective on the ground, but also at the same time, it is at scale, that it happens quickly, and it is sustainable, that it lasts for a long time rather than just as a little small project. And so at C4EC, our objective has been, how do you work with some of the most mature and forward-thinking philanthropists on how do you redesign or how do you design the transformation such that it can be a multiplication of the work that they are doing. And that is why the word exponential. So it's multiplying. And at the same time, it is something which is going to reach more and more people across the society. The third important point is that this change should unlock many more types of capital in support of this change, because only philanthropic capital may not be adequate to address the challenges of the society. But philanthropic capital can be very catalytic. And it can be catalytic in many ways. It can be catalytic in unlocking other philanthropic capital. It can be catalytic in making better use of the state capital that is already being put for societal development. And it can be catalytic in transforming the way private sector and private capital is used to move the society. So what we deeply believe is that philanthropic capital should be treated like a catalyst rather than as a resource. In physics, in chemistry actually, a catalyst is something that gets used but does not get used to accelerate the reaction, but does not get utilized. And so how do you think about philanthropic capital as something that accelerates the change in the society, but does not get consumed in the process? Because if it gets consumed, then its impact is only that much. But if it multiplies, then its impact is much larger. So at C4EC, that's what our objective is. And that is why C4EC has been co-founded by multiple philanthropic organizations. Of course, Institute of Asia. Then we have the Skoll Foundation. We have New Profit from the US. We have Yellowwoods from South Africa, and the Nilekani Philanthropies from India, coming together to be able to create this capability so that philanthropic capital can go much further than it has gone in the past. C4EC is a network, and our vision is that every country should have a node which is its own, built with its own leaders, with its own talent, its own philanthropic infusion, in service of the people of that country. In 2023, when we started thinking about the idea of C4EC and we started to imagine what could be possible, I started visiting different countries. So I came to Brazil. I spent time in Sao Paulo. I spent time in Rio. And that is the first time I met a lot of interesting, fantastic leaders in Brazil, change leaders, different foundations, different business leaders, to learn about the state of the society, what are its cares, what are its concerns. In that process, I also met Cristiano Sultani, who is now a co-founder of C4EC. And I got an understanding of what are the pros and cons of bringing such a capability to Brazil. At the same time, I also went to Kenya and saw what's happening in Kenya. I went to South Africa. I went and saw what's happening in South Africa. I was trying to understand different countries. And then we started to do an analysis by using data to look at the society, its population, its socioeconomic development, its history, its state of philanthropy, its state of business, state of the government, the challenges of the people, and to try and understand that if we come to a country, would we be useful? Would we be valuable? It's not that just because I have something that it is useful, it may be useless in this country. But then when I met the leaders here and I explained what I'm trying to do, they said, no, this would be something which would be useful for Brazil. And the more and more people, and then when I met Chris said, I would like to bring it to Brazil. And I said, okay, so let's now think. So when C4EC got created in 2024, and Chris joined as the co-founder, she said, we should think of Centro para Mudanças Exponenciais, which is the CME in Brazil. So it was based on a lot of factors. It was based on the country, its history, its people, its change leaders, a visionary like Chris coming into the discussion, my understanding of the culture. I believe that C4EC is an idea that's born in the Global South. And it can only become better by working in a South-South cooperation way. And that's why Brazil, India, Africa, Indonesia, this year our plan is to start with Indonesia. It's very important to understand the values of the leaders and what do they believe in and what do they think about people when they think about people. It's not about technology. It's not about process. It's about people. So I got that sense, and I was fortunate that the leadership of Institute Asia, us coming together, the first center, it was such an important moment in November of 2024 when the center got inaugurated, because this was the first time we had brought that idea and created another node. And after that, South Africa got created and stuff has happened. But yeah, this will always be special, super special for us. So our journey here actually began a bit before we started working at C4EC, even before C4EC. This is the 10th year of my journey. So C4EC started in 2024, but I started in 2016. Between that time, I had started working with and connecting with some of the leaders here. Early days, did some work with Mapa do Acolhimento on gender-based violence, but very little. It was only after the creation of CME that it started to take good shape. And then we started to take our journey with Serenas in, again, gender-based violence. We started to work with Desenrola in the misinformation, disinformation area, and with Mabiomas on the whole biomes. And then additionally, more journey partners have eventually joined the movement. So now we have Conexus, who has joined the movement, SAS Brazil, Visão Coupe. The whole work of C4EC and our model societal thinking is based on agency, dignity, and choice of people. And with each of these journeys, we see that they also focus on improving the agency of people, improving the dignity of people, and giving them the choice to do what they think is right for them. So, so it's very natural rather than, otherwise, if you have to work with different values, it's harder. But if you have the same values and you have to work with a different process, it's easier. So different values, harder. Same values, different process, easier. So it's been an interesting journey. Translation of some of the ideas is harder because of language. But we are learning. Working with the leaders here, I have learned that working with the system is very different in Brazil. And that's why CME has been so important, because they understand the Brazilian context, the team here, to be able to take an idea and then bring it alive here in this context. It's so important. But the leaders, the chain leaders, the journey partners, as we call them, they are amazing. They are so genuine. They are so passionate about their country and the people of the country, and they are so committed to solving the issues that it inspires us to work with them, saying whatever we have, whatever we can do, it's at their disposal, because they care so deeply about the people, about the inequity, about the issues around justice, the issues around rights, the issues around the speed of development, the issues around the cycles of development, going well, not going well, then again going well. It's very hard, but they are very, very strong leaders. Technology as an infrastructure rather than technology as a application or not as a solution. In India, it's been a journey of 15 years now, maybe a little more, 2009, so maybe 17, when we started to rethink what role could technology play in development of the society. 2009, our founder, Nandan, stepped out of the company that he was working for, Infosys, that he founded, to join the government of India and start the Identity Project of India. And it's been a fascinating journey because it's now an infrastructure that's used by 1.4 billion people. And so we learned a lot of lessons on the way. What does it take to do this? It's not only about technology, it's about adoption, it's about use cases, it's about solving people's problems. What problems can identity solve? It's so fundamental, identity. For someone to be able to say, I am who I say I am, is so transformative. And so we understood the power of simple questions answered at scale, right? One simple question. Because if I can't prove who I am, then I can't access the social services, I can't access the support system, I can't access credit, I can't access jobs, livelihood, education, health, just because you don't believe who I am. And how do we solve that at scale? And that's what had happened. A few years later, we reimagined the payment infrastructure of India, called the Unified Payments Interface. And that team that did a brilliant job in how do you move money for free in very small quantities, because that changes financial inclusion. That changes the way people live their lives and engage with money. And so today that infrastructure is used about 700 million times a day. But that was the journey that started to make us think that technology has a different role. Typically people design a solution and then they say, how do I make this solution efficient with technology? And we said, no, technology has a prior role. Technology is an infrastructure. It's like the road. It's like the internet. It's like the GPS. And so what is that infrastructure for health? What's that infrastructure for education, for getting people jobs, for getting people credit, how do you make it easier for more and more people to get more and more services at the scale of a country of the size? And hence the pattern of thinking called digital public goods and digital public infrastructure was created. And the idea is that if people have a reliable way of saying who they are, if they can transact at a very low friction, and if their data can be used to focus on development in different areas, then the whole innovation ecosystem opens up in a very different way. But then we realized that there's a pattern of thinking here, and that's how societal thinking got created, right? Which was like, what problem are you trying to solve? If you're trying to solve access to healthcare in Brazil, from that problem, can you come back to what is the technology backbone required to do it? And then can you build that infrastructure? And that infrastructure should not be only about solving one healthcare problem. It should be able to solve many healthcare problems because it's infrastructure. You don't build a road for car and separate road for small car and big car and trucks, and you build one road. So how do you think like that? How do you think about technology, which has three main roles? It should reduce the cost of trust, because the people who are most vulnerable pay for trust. You and I can get away with people trusting us because we have bank accounts to show, and we have a passport to show, and we have a driver's license to show. But how do you trust somebody who has none of that? So who pays for it? The people, poor people pay for it. And the vulnerable people will pay for it. They pay through higher interest rates. They will pay through non-accessibility to services. They pay with their lives. So who pays for the cost of trust? So we should reduce the cost of trust because it takes money to get services, to get education, to get health. The simpler it is to get it, the more effective it is to reach more and more people. But coordination is expensive. Coordination takes money. So how do you reduce the cost of coordination? That's how we are so excited about, say, what an Uber does or what a door delivery system does. What are they doing? They're reducing the cost of coordination, right? But how to do that for school children of remote communities? There's a cost of coordination to get the teacher there, to get the education material there, to get the right kind of services there. Who reduces that cost of coordination? And there's a cost of knowledge diffusion, because people who have resources can access the best of the knowledge of today. But people who don't have resources are always devoid of the knowledge. So in healthcare, people could be suffering for diseases for which treatment is already known, because that knowledge cannot diffuse to that village or that remote area or the edges of the forest. Nobody knows how to get there. So this is a cost of diffusion of knowledge. Technology today, with AI, with protocols, with platforms, can solve all these problems. It's possible to reduce the cost of trust, cost of coordination, and cost of knowledge diffusion. So we should look at technology like that, rather than the next portal, the next application. Those will be there. Those are solved. But we have to really change the way the system works for the most vulnerable people at scale using technology. It's about 30, 40, 50 million people. What does it mean to make it easier for them is the real design challenge. And so in our work at C4C and CME, the question is, how do you use technology to make innovation easier, to make delivery easier, so that many people can deliver the services to many people? That's exponential. Exponential is many solvers solving for many people. That's multiplication, right? So I look at technology very from this lens, rather than the latest, greatest advancements in technology. And that's okay. They usually will serve the most people who have most resources. They will not serve the people who have no resources. Few thoughts are important to consider. One is that for a long time, we had been puzzled with this idea as to how do you deal with this subject in a country of the scale and complexity of India. Our mothership foundation is called X-Step Foundation. X-Step Foundation is the foundation that supports all the initiatives. C4C India is one of them, right? And the leaders at X-Step Foundation were carrying this question that how do we now apply all this thinking and all the learnings of the last 15, 17 years to early childhood development? And after a lot of soul searching, I think their conclusion was that the narrative is different. It needs to change. What do you talk about when you talk about a child? Right? So do you talk about development of the child? Do you talk about the future of the child? Do you talk about the opportunity of the child? Or do you talk about how difficult it is? Or do you talk about how challenging it is? Do you talk about why it's a big problem? What's the narrative? What is the disposition of parents, of people who work on early childhood development, of the different system actors? And so a massive narrative building exercise was taken up to talk to people and saying, what do you think when you think about the child? And from that process came out this distillation that building the narrative around that the children deserve to play is what was the most interesting idea. It sounds very simple, but it is not that simple, right? Because people want children to go to centers and go to schools and go through structure. But the learning here was that no, childhood needs to be celebrated and children need to play. That started a campaign or a whole movement in India called Bachpan Manao. Bachpan Manao means celebrate childhood. With different parts of the society. And then eventually many NGOs got involved. The government got involved. The media industry got involved. Actors, film, news. And it started to become a conversation of how do we think about our children. So it was not a classical saying, okay, we need a program, we need some technology, we need some data. But it was about, let's change the way we relate to children. That's one experience. And still going on. It's a long-term movement, still building velocity. It's beautiful how so many places have come together, which are looking at development as a joyful experience rather than development as a stressful experience. It's so important for children. South Africa was an interesting example or an interesting journey. I'm still on that journey. It started actually way before C4EC was born with an organization called Smart Start. Smart Start works on early childhood development in South Africa. They are one of the largest network of ECD practitioners. And we had started to explore what does it take to provide universal access to early learning across the whole country. It's a country of about 4.5 million children, approximately, and about 1.2 million don't have access to early childhood learning. And so we were working with it through the C4EC's process of designing. And then a moment came where the government of South Africa, the Department of Basic Education, wanted to reimagine what was possible. They had recently published their strategy for 2030 for universal access. And they said, how do we translate this into action? And so we said, let's do a blueprinting exercise. And that started about 1.5 years ago with this whole conversation, because the Department of Basic Education and the government of South Africa had increased their child subsidy from about 10 billion rands to about 22 billion rands, right? So they had almost doubled it. So, and at the same time, there was this whole energy in the ecosystem that let us get this thing right. Our co-founders, Yellowwoods Foundation in South Africa, decided to be the catalyst to bring the room together, to convene, to become the conveners. So Department of Basic Education, National Treasury, some of the leading NGOs, some of the leading funders, they all got together. And we went through this process of designing a blueprint for universal access to early learning in South Africa. Very interesting process and exercise of working with such diverse actors through multiple conversations, multiple sessions, workshops, to try to create a frame that anybody in South Africa could work with in the service of the 4.5 million children, with 3 important objectives. One was universal access. Second was quality, very high quality of development. And third was, how do you resource it so that it is sustainable? Because many of the vulnerable people can't pay for child services. So there are government grants, but government grants have their own limitations. How do you make a system that can sustain? Because children will continue to develop through the process. The blueprint got ready, it got announced or shared with the public for their opinion. So it was open for public consultations to what do they think. And so a lot of people gave their feedback and what they would like to see differently. And then we factored the feedback, and the second version was published saying, okay, now this is with public consultation. An orchestration team was formed. And now where we are, it's in the process of implementation. There are specific actions over a 5-year period that are supported by philanthropists. So philanthropists are playing a very key role. They have set up different kinds of funds. There is the government with the subsidy and the grants and other investments. Then now we are trying to see how do you involve the private sector to come and play their role. And the community, most importantly, because at the heart of the whole exercise was, who's closest to the child? Closest to the child is the parent and the practitioner, if there is one. It's not there always, but if they have access to childcare, then there's a practitioner who is running the center or the mama. And they could be parents, they could be grandparents, go-go's as they are known in South Africa. That network has to be really strong because that's where actual development happens. Everybody else is responsible to make that network better. So that has been the idea, very agency-driven. And as we speak, is a good movement and mobilization that is happening across South Africa, different actors getting involved. There's a central orchestration team that's working on driving this change. For me, that was very inspiring. I would say it's the first time I saw such collective action focused on the children of the country at scale for every child. It's called Banapele, which is the name of the movement. We work with a very inspiring foundation in India called Selco Foundation. Selco Foundation is led by one of the most inspiring chain leaders of India called Harish Hande. And when we started debating this topic of climate and its implications, we had a realization that in the global south, when we talk of climate, we talk of how do you reduce the impact on the planet, the greenhouse gas emissions, but we are worried that it will have implications for slowing down the economy, because then people think that less carbon means less growth. Or we say, no, global south must continue growth because we have to serve people. And so if you drive growth, economic growth, then it will have higher impact on the planet. But the third thing which we never talk about is what happens to inequity in both of these things. What about inequity? What about justice to people? Because one can optimize greenhouse gas emissions or optimize GDP, but what about distribution of resources to people? If you put all the three together on one graph, it creates a very interesting situation where the solution that you really want is the one that reduces greenhouse gas emission, increases economic growth, and reduces inequity at the same time, right? I call it the perfect design challenge. It's easy to optimize one line, or maybe with a lot of thinking optimize two lines. It's very hard to optimize all the three lines. But if you're good designers and we are thinking about designing the future, then we have to optimize all the three lines. And that's how we started a very aspirational program in India called Climate Responsive Livelihoods. The idea was to optimize all the three lines, which means that there should be an increase in livelihoods. People should get more income. But as they get more income, the load on the planet should come down and the distribution of income should go up. So we designed a whole program, a blueprint around it on how you do that by using different types of energy constructs, innovations, role of technology, networks, government schemes, entrepreneurship, micro-entrepreneurship, etc., etc. And we said, let's pilot it. Let's try it out. So as we speak, we are currently piloting it in one state of India called Meghalaya to create 150,000 jobs, which are climate responsive in nature. And that's happening because of a whole different system of how you look at these three questions: equity, economic growth, and greenhouse gas emissions. The point I wanted to make here was that when we think of climate, there are different programs and initiatives that look at optimizing one of the three things. What we need is for people to sit together and say, how do you find the intersection of all three and do that? Because if you do one and ignore the other two, it will just not scale, because the resistance, if you only focus on saying CO2 emission, then the society will push back, because people need to survive, they need to thrive, they need economic growth. You can't pull it back. If you drive economic growth, then the planet will lash back, right? If you look at only that. And if you try to create very specialized solutions that are very expensive and sophisticated, that they do greenhouse gas emission with economic equity, but to a very few people, then inequity will increase, because very few people will benefit from that. So we're looking for simple solutions which are good for the planet and can serve millions of people. I believe that every country and the designers and innovators in every country should take that as a challenge. It's an innovation challenge. And that innovation will lead us to think about better uses of technology, better uses of new innovations, better ways of connecting with people, better ways of working together, better ways of collaborating, co-creating, because it is not a simple problem to solve. And so that has been a very important question. And then we are building the model such that we can take it to any state. Many states in India are probably bigger than some of the countries in Africa. Then how can we take it to Africa? So we are trying to build a model that can be taken to any state, anywhere in the world, unbundled and reassembled for the context of that state, because every state is different. They're not same. So it is not a template. It is like Lego. Like you play Lego, you have the box of bricks. It's like a Lego box. So you take it to a different country, so you open the box, and then you make a new toy out of it. And then you take it to the next country, you make another toy out of it. But the building blocks make it easier, less expensive, less time, less design load. And we can put the money to design new Lego boxes and new Lego bricks, which don't exist in this set. So every time we go to another state or another country, instead of making the same Lego brick again, we make a new Lego brick, which can be used in another country. So we are hoping in the next few years, we would take this challenge in a different way. That's one axis. But then there's the other axis of people who are already working, like farmers. And how do you ensure that the climate responsive livelihood is a part of the farming ecosystem? Because they're already in motion. The economic construct is clear, but the climate construct has to be brought in. That requires diffusion of knowledge, increasing coordination, and improving trust. And that's where we've been using AI. Recently, we launched the Open AgriNet, which is the Open Agricultural Network, which serves about 150 million farmers of India to help them learn and understand how to do things better, how to do things differently, how to access resources, how to access schemes. Again, the same question, that if a farmer wants to optimize for income equity and planetary impact, do they have access to the resources to be able to do it? And we believe today, in this day and age, AI can be the assistant to help people understand. Farmers don't have to have the capacity to be a climate scientist, right? But they need to get that knowledge. And they need to get that knowledge by just talking rather than some sophisticated searches on portal. They can't do that. And so we have now rolled it out. It's a very interesting experience. I think we are about 5 million farmers at the moment who are engaged with this network, learning, applying. So I think this question around the climate, its intersection with livelihoods, is a question true for the entire continent of Africa, all the countries here, Brazil included, and for India and for Southeast Asia, because our economy is agrarian economies, right? We are built with that. And it's not only an agrarian economy, it's a smallholder farmer economy. It's not these large aggregated industrialized farming economies. So the response has to be different. Yeah, but that's the entire excitement that I think we are at the edge of cracking something. If we get it right, then probably we can make solutions which are people and the planet, and not people or